Blood for the Blood God. Skulls for the Skull Throne. Subscribers for Dark Haven. If you... Excuse me. If you like this content, please do like and subscribe. This video will engage with the lore of Khorne in Warhammer Fantasy exclusively, focusing on the god, his realm, his worshippers, and his most powerful and notable servants. 40k fans will have to wait a little longer. I will engage with legendary lords briefly, but the units of his armies and those lords will be dealt with in greater detail another time, just so we do them justice. Khorne is one of the 4 major gods of chaos. These 4 maladies are often described together as the ruinous powers. All of the ruinous powers strive to achieve dominion over the mortal world. Khorne, however, strives for more than simple control. He looks for utter dominance. Khorne is the mightiest of the gods in his effect on the mortal world and in the great game between the gods. His domain encompasses the most basic and brutal of sentient emotions: hate, anger, rage, the desire for destruction, and the joy of killing one's enemies. Every act of killing or murder in the mortal world feeds and empowers Khorne. The more senseless, vicious, and bloodthirsty, the better. Khorne is the most violent and destructive of the 4 major chaos gods. He represents unrestrained aggression, mindless frenzy, and bloodshed. His lust for blood is unquenchable, and he is forever goading his followers to take up arms and murder in his name. Khorne's anger and violence is an unbridled force, targets both friends and foes alike. He watches scenes of barbarism and slaughter with delight, and it is said he sounds his horn across the chaos wastes to incite further frenzy. During times of utter destruction and murder, Khorne's bellows resound in the chaos wastes, causing madness in any that might hear them. Of all the ruinous powers, Khorne is the biggest instigator of war and destruction, constantly whipping up his followers to lay siege to the cities, towns, and hamlets of the old world. Every life taken through violence in the mortal world nourishes and nurtures Khorne in the realm of chaos. Interestingly, he is also the god of martial pride and honor, of those who set themselves against the most dangerous foes and earn victory against the odds. His warriors, though gore-maddened berserkers all, take no artful approach to killing, for such indulgent displays serve only to empower Slaanesh, the honorless adversary of Khorne, amongst the company of the Chaos Gods. Khorne is said to exalt the brave of both sides of a battle, while at the same time laying his terrible vengeance upon the cowardly and craven. According to the warrior code of his devotees, it is the solemn right of every warrior to die an honorable death in battle, sword and axe in hand. Khorne is also known as the Blood God, the Lord of Murder, the Lord of Skulls, Hunter of Souls, and the Hound in Norska. He is the major chaos god of war, hatred, wrath, rage, murder, blood, strength, courage, and martial honor. His armies and worshippers are often found to chant, "Blood for the Blood God, skulls for the Skull Throne." No mortal would be able to lay their eyes upon Khorne and survive, but various heretical writers have suggested that the blood god looks somewhat like one of his mighty bloodthirster greater demons, only infinitely more terrifying. His eyes burning with endless fury in the center of his dog-like face. Khorne is often referred to as he with the masculine gender, though in fact, like all the entities composed of magical energy called the Chaos Gods, it in fact has no true gender. Khorne is also traditionally visualized as a massive humanoid being with skin the color of blood. He sits atop a grand brass throne atop a mountain of skulls and blood-covered bones, the trophies of those that he or his followers have slain in battle or killed in his name. Wearing intricately carved plate armor covered in writhing runes and faces screaming in pain and torment, a huge winged helmet sits on his head, partially obscuring his inhuman, snarling face. He favors weapons that spill the most amount of blood, massive greatswords, axes, and huge-bladed polearms. Khorne's domain in the realm of chaos, the blood god's domain, is said to have mighty forges and armories that run for leagues, belching sooty filth into the lightning-cracked air. Yet he will forever favor a single combination of arms. He is encased in his brass plate armor, capable of deflecting any blow, and clutches his colossal sword that could carve continents in half with a single stroke. Khorne's mighty throne room, built at the very top of his great brass citadel, is supported by 8 gigantic brass pillars in honor of the sacred number of the blood god. Khorne sits resplendent in his rage upon his brass throne, resting atop a mountain of bloody skulls, built from the countless heads of great champions his followers have slain over an immeasurable number of eons. The tower itself rises leagues into the blackened sky, surrounded by a moat of molten blood filled with the screaming enemies of Khorne, whilst the blackened brass walls are covered with monstrous carvings that depict the endless rage of the occupants within. The throne room is also filled with the blood god's favoured flesh hounds, including the greatest of their number, the mighty Karanak, blessed with 3 heads and far more powerful than the rest of his kin. Some have described these loyal beasts as a bodyguard for Khorne, but to him they are but pets, as the blood god has never been bested in mortal combat and thus needs no protection. Even if another of the ruinous powers were to enter the brass citadel, Khorne knows that he alone would prove triumphant. Such is his infinite strength and skill. Khorne is the least subtle of the Chaos Gods. He puts none of his will into any endeavor that does not cause bloodshed. His lands in the realm of chaos are barren, cracked, and dry, save for the ceaseless rivers of blood fueled by the endless combat that occurs on them. Throughout his domain, legions of warriors fling themselves into combat purely for the sake and glory of battle. Khorne may not be the subtlest of the ruinous powers, but that is not to say that he does not have goals and ambitions to fulfill beyond seeing blood spilled in his name. His rage may be endless, his fury immutable, but Khorne has a savage intelligence, seeing the need to lay seeds for his destructive plans to pay off in the future. Unable to directly enter the mortal realm, Khorne must rely on others to achieve his aims, and he has many followers, servants, and thralls. For most who worship Khorne, service to the blood god is simple. You walk a path of absolute violence and commit yourself to slaughter and battle. Khorne has little use for subtlety, secrecy, and subterfuge, so his minions typically leave civilization to participate in these rites rather than practice in hiding. They do not have allies per se, simply fellow murderers that are just as likely to kill each other as those they oppose. Those that cannot escape from mortal society become mass murderers and psychopaths, roaming the streets of cities and villages of the old world, gibbering and spouting nonsense intermingled with their garbled praises to Khorne. Khorne revels in a mortal who seeks glory, for in old world society this leads frequently to feelings of anger at one's enemies and a need to see them dead. Others may turn to the service of the ruinous powers in order to have their ambitions fulfilled. Examples of those drawn to Khorne include the militiaman who simply dreams of having the strength to repel his foes in order to see his wife and young child again, or the aging knight who wishes the strength of his youth still coursed through his veins. At the same time, many despair at their fate, and whilst Khorne finds this pathetic, he may still bestow blessings upon these wretched souls. Sometimes there is no better servant than one who is picked up at the lowest ebb and given their wish. The hearts of this kind of mortal often burn most fiercely for Khorne. Some servants of Khorne come willingly, others are slowly drawn in. There is a fine line between justice and vengeance, and in seeking revenge, many people cannot control the nihilism and anger within themselves, which spills over into a fury that cannot be purged from their body. This leads them into direct exposure to the principles Khorne espouses, and far too often wrath and rage has so consumed the person that inevitably the blood god then consumes their very soul. The blood god has little use for magic and does not grant spells to his worshippers. The way of the Lord of Skulls is one of battle, not subtlety and magic. From this, his followers have inferred that Khorne is violently opposed to sorcery in all of its forms and commit themselves to slaughtering wizards, sorcerers, and other magic users whenever and wherever they can. The truth is, so long as there's slaughter, Khorne is pleased. There are no known wizards that dedicate themselves to Khorne. However, this does not preclude followers from using magic weapons, especially if they were acquired by murdering their previous owners. Khorne requires blood. Khorne requires skulls. Khorne requires violence, destruction, and utter subservience to his cause. His blessings are not a sign of kindness, love, devotion, or care. His servants are nothing more than a means to an end, designing them to increase the efficiency of them as killing machines, driving them on to greater acts of ferocity. Khorne does not care about the lives of his minions, and the minions themselves seem to care even less. The hate and rage that fills them eventually dominates their every thought. Driven onwards in battle, Khorne's followers eagerly sacrifice themselves to the enemy's blade, and retreat is never an option. The blood god himself sits impassively. He simply seeks out destruction and bloodshed and cares not from where it comes or who delivers it. His indifference to his mortal servants does, however, mean that Khorne is in always need of new champions. There is a dual purpose to this need. When a warrior falls, a new one is needed to step into the breach to take his predecessor's place so that Khorne can gain the upper hand in his struggle in the great game. Secondly, the introduction of new blood can be used to test his existing champions. If new and old Khornate warriors meet in a challenge, then Khorne can only benefit. If the existing champion emerges victorious, then this warrior will have learned something from the foe he has just defeated, increasing his already impressive skills. If the challenger walks away alive from the combat, then the defeated warrior was a weakling and unfit to serve Khorne. His body will make a meager sacrifice to the blood god but no more. Through this brutal and bloody system of natural selection, Khorne slowly builds up the strength and power of his forces, waiting for the moment he can unleash them upon the unknowing mortal world. Khorne does have other plans, besides defeating his rival Chaos Gods and destroying mortal civilization. However, Khorne realizes that it is unlikely the mortal world will fall in one swift action, and so he looks to build his influence slowly, spreading destruction, anarchy, and death wherever possible. The Blood Gods' dedicated Chaos Marauders and Chaos Warriors look to test the boundaries of the Empire and Kislev in particular, probing for weaknesses and identifying suitable invasion points. These raids gradually weaken the defenses of those two strategically vital realms of the old world, which take time to rebuild, whereas Khorne has an endless supply of eager warriors ready to seek bloodshed and sacrifice skulls in his name.
Khorne has many legions at his disposal and armies that can drown the landscape in a tide of carnage and death. I will, at a later date, engage with the units and abilities of the armies of Khorne, as well as giving its notable characters proper look. Karbanda. Karbanda, also called the Huntsmaster, is a powerful and high-ranking bloodthirster of Khorne. He served under the leadership of the 13th ever-chosen Archaon, commanding the demonic servants of the Blood God during the conflicts of the end times. Karbanda is said to be above even Skarbrand in status in the eyes of Khorne, and he personally considers the hunt for new victims more enjoyable than the actual kill. Skarbrand, the Exiled One. Once the bloodthirster known as Skarbrand was the greatest of Khorne's demonic servants, having battled long in his lord's name and won victories beyond counting. In all the infinite years of Khorne's existence, none had placed more skulls at the base of his throne than Skarbrand, or spilt more blood of warrior and innocent alike for the Blood God's glory. Thus did Skarbrand enjoy Khorne's favour like no other, yet pride proved Skarbrand's downfall, as Tzeentch secretly fanned the fires of the bloodthirster's ego until he sought to usurp Khorne as the Lord of Battles. And one day, while the Chaos God's back was turned, Skarbrand summoned all his strength for a single strike upon the Blood God. Needless to say, this did not go well, and Skarbrand found himself cast out, cursed. He now ravages the mortal realms in an endless, chaotic rage. Uruf, Demon King, a demon prince of Khorne, and formerly one of his mightiest mortal champions. Uruf, Demon King, born as Uruf, was once a chieftain of the Snagara tribe of Norska, ardent worshippers of Khorne and savage warriors who were the scourge of the southern lands. Uruf was reckoned to be the greatest warrior and leader amongst them, and was raised up to demonhood by Khorne for his strength. Uzul, the Skull Taker. Travelers in the realm of chaos tell of a fearsome wanderer who appears before the various strongholds dotted throughout that twisted nightmare landscape. There he bellows out a terrible challenge, demanding that the greatest warriors of that fastness emerge from it and face him in battle. Those who do are inevitably slain by the wanderer's berserk fury, for he is Uzul, the Skull Taker, first amongst Khorne's bloodletters, Valkyr the Bloody, foremost amongst the dread lords of chaos who follow the Blood God, is this fell former warrior queen of Norska's Schwarzwolf tribe, now ascended to become a demon prince of Khorne. Valkyr the Bloody, known as the Shield Maiden of Khorne and the Gaul Queen, is said by the Norse sagas to currently be the paramour of the wrathful blood god who he raised from death to serve as his immortal consort, Khorne. Demonic beasts such as fleshhounds might seem to be made with such clear purpose that there is little to mark one from another. This is untrue, and followers of the blood god claim that there are fleshhounds of particular import, such as the massive hound of Khorne that has been ridden by some of his favoured champions, or Khorne, the three-headed fleshhound that prowls Khorne's grand throne room in the brass citadel of the blood god's domain in the realm of chaos. Skylar and Fingrim. The life of Skylar and Fingrim is a cautionary tale of what appears to the vast majority of the mortals who end up in the service of the blood god. And Fingrim was once one of Khorne's greatest champions, a warrior of immense strength hailing from the northern wastes. He killed by the thousand and received many rewards from Khorne until, at last, his wasted body collapsed and transformed into a chaos spawn. Although Skylar still somehow retained enough intelligence to curry the favour of Khorne, he is now fated to forever walk across the blasted, snowy wastelands of the north. Arbal, the Undefeated, also known as the Destroyer of Khorne. Arbal was an ancient and powerful champion of Khorne who wrought many woes upon the mortal world during the time of the Great War against Chaos, and it is said that he still lives to this very day, a Chaos champion who has remained undefeated for countless centuries. Abrax the Bloody. Abrax the Bloody, also known as the Bloody Wanderer, is a Norscan Chaos Lord and champion of Khorne renowned for his legendary bloodthirst. Once a warrior of the Norscan village of Heimhal, Abrax's savage legend would begin during the terrible hardships of the legendary Blackened Winter, where the winds of chaos blew violently into Norsca, engulfing the land in roiling clouds of sorcerous corruption. During this time, the Norscans' few crops and livestock died en masse, driving the warlike tribes of the north to slaughter each other in order to control their bleak homeland's diminished resources. It was during this time that Abrax, then but a young blood, took up arms to defend his village against the ruthless barbarian invaders. His bloody exploits in the long months of battle caught the eye of the blood god Khorne, who elevated Abrax into one of his greatest chaos champions. Despite being the god of bloodlust, slaughter, and destruction, you do still find examples of individuality, character within the ranks of the blood god's armies, a testament to the quality of the lore and the world of Warhammer Fantasy. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I had, as usual, a really good time delving through old Warhammer books, googling, YouTubing, researching. Delightful. Khorne is a magnificent creation. I really do think that it's very interesting. Obviously, he's the god of war, blood, destruction, so on and so forth, which you would think would be quite monotonous, perhaps a bit one-dimensional. But there is a lot going on when you look into the lore. It's not just endless bloodshed. There's elements of tragedy, destiny, people struggling to survive, people making terrible decisions. The morality is not all black and white, or perhaps I should say red and white in this case. Great, a really great creation. I love it. And I'd also just like to say that I do recommend playing as Khorne in the various outlets you can, on the tabletop, in Total War, Warhammer, however else you may engage with it. But they are an absolute delight to play, super aggressive, hit like an absolute truck, and a lot of cool abilities and character. You really do grow attached, and you can't mistake them for anything else. But again, thank you for watching. Take care. Goodbye.